one of the most blessed and anointed families in the Bible is Abraham's family. Through Abraham's seed, the Messiah was going to come. And through Abraham, all the families of the earth would be blessed. I'd say that's anointed. And that when the Messiah came, he would bring salvation to all mankind. So that is one blessed family. However, that family was the most dysfunctional family in the Bible. And that ought to be, by the way, a source of encouragement, because it means this: God does not give up on dysfunction. He doesn't see it and then walk away. He sees it and comes towards it. So many times we would feel bad and we would feel hesitant about even lifting up our head, but God is looking. After all, you know, it's interesting, you watch television sometimes and they bring some weird dysfunctional person into the showroom and they talk with them, and you know what would be the most shocking thing is if they were able to find a functional person and bring them into the television show, because everybody somewhere is dysfunctional. Am I right about that? In the first verse of Genesis 27, this is what we read. Now it came to pass when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son," and he answered him, "Here I am." That's what sons need to do when dad calls. I want you to notice that it says his eyes were so dim that he could not see. We understand that to be a physical malady, but the truth is he was blind in a lot of ways. He was blind to his wife. He did not see eye to eye with Rebekah. He kept her in the dark about what his plans were. And you just need to read the story to see how Isaac just led the family regardless of how the family felt, and he was totally blind about what favoritism was going to do to his family. And what is interesting is that he got it from somebody. Abraham favored Isaac over Ishmael because Isaac was the promised son. Isaac favored Esau over Jacob because he was a good hunter and he was able to perform for him, and so he won his love. Jacob would grow up and get married, and he would have a family, and he would favor his son Joseph, causing his family to be in an uproar and strife. You see how one dysfunction can pass on to the next generation and to the next generation and to the next generation? Until somebody says, it stops here. I'm not going to allow what happened to my grandfather or my father continue with me. And that's why we need the Lord. This is what it says. And he said to his son Esau, "Behold, now I am old." How old is old? If somebody raised their hand. If you didn't know how old you were, would you know how old you were? If you didn't know what the years were? Isaac was 137 years old. So he had a right to say, "Behold, I am old, and I do not know the day of my death." What is interesting about that is he's 137 years old, but he was going to live another 40 years. But somehow he was discouraged about being 137, and I would be too, and he thought he was going to be dying any day, and so he calls his son in. He's got his plan, and here's the plan. "Now therefore, please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And make me savory food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now it seems a simple statement. He is talking to his son. He's telling his son to go out and kill an animal and bring it. And he loved the venison, and so his son was going to do whatever he asked. But he was resisting God when he told Esau, I'm going to give you the blessing. He was blind to the fact that Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Blind to the fact that Esau married Hittite women, which was bringing the family into a lot of grief. Blind to a lot of things, and he was circumventing God's plan because God chose Jacob. Now, God can choose anybody he wants. It's his business. And God told Rebekah that Jacob would be the one in the family that would rise above, and the older would serve the younger. But Isaac is going to resist God. I guess he wanted to sing later on, I did it my way. Not so fast, Isaac. You know, the truth is, have we ever resisted God? Have we ever resisted, fought against God's will? God says to us, grow up, and we hold on to our childish ways. God says, be patient. And we say, I want what I want when I want it. God says, my peace I'm giving you. But we hold on to our anger, and you cannot have peace and anger at the same time. They do not exist together. God says, be humble. And we say, and we don't use words, but we say, well, you know, you got to look out after yourself. And humble is a little too passive for me. So we ourselves, before we throw any stones at Isaac, we need to remember that in our own selves we have resisted God. God's will needs to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And when it's not, God makes arrangements. He sent Moses into the wilderness for 40 years until he got the message. And he said, you're going to have to watch these sheep for 40 years so that when I do call you at the burning bush, you can go back to Egypt and bring those sheep to the promised land. And it's amazing how God will take his time to prepare us. He prepared a fish to swallow Jonah, because Jonah was going to resist God, and God is sovereign. And if God wants something, he will get it. He will get it over our objection. And so he got Jonah to go to Nineveh and preach like God asked him to begin with. And the same thing is true when it comes to the eagle. The eagle has one objective. After little eaglets are born, the eagle has the objection of making sure these little eaglets can fly, because if they can't fly, they can't survive. They must fly so they can get their prey, and the only way they can feed themselves is if they learn to fly. But the eaglet is way up high in a nest, and when it looks down over the nest is so far below, the eaglet doesn't want to jump out to learn to fly. So the mother eagle removes all of the soft comfort that's in that nest until the eaglet is motivated to leap out, and it learns to fly. God knows how to make arrangements, because he wants his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. I guess the idea is give God what he wants. What does God want? And he may want something from you, he's not asking from me. And he may want something from me, he's not asking you. Give God what he wants. And he wanted Jacob, who was chosen, to be the one that received the birthright promise. What Isaac did not know is that while he was talking to Esau, Rebekah was listening on the other side of the tent, listening to what he was saying to his son. And so she decided she was going to devise her own plan to deceive her husband, who kept her in the dark, And she's going to see to it that the promise that God made to her was going to be fulfilled if she had to roll up her sleeves to make it happen. Now, whether or not she was right in doing that or waiting for God to do it is not the issue. The issue is she devised a plan, and she called Jacob in, and she said, Jacob, this is what we got to do. Go out and get a goat. I'm going to prepare the goat to the way your dad loves it. And I'm going to take the goat skins and put it on your arm and put some around your neck, because Esau is a hairy man, and when you go see your dad, he can't see you, but he will feel you. And if he feels that hair, then he'll think it's you or Esau. So the plot was developed. So Jacob went to his father and said, my father. Isaac said, who are you, my son? And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau. Is that a lie? I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done just as you told me. Please arise, sit and eat my game, that your soul may bless me. Now, if you'd have asked Jacob, Jacob said, that's just a white lie. And you know why we call white lies white lies? Because we always create a justification for whatever the lie is. It doesn't even matter, just as long as it's a justification. And Jacob would have said, wait a minute, he sold me the birthright for a bowl of soup. So I have the right. It's amazing how we inject, I got a right, and not realize sometimes that it is against what it is that God is planning to do, and God is going to make arrangements to get his will accomplished. And so we read this. Now it happened as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence. This is like real suspense. And Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He comes in, he discovers the plot, he is angry, there is an explosion, and it shattered the family forever. Esau wants to kill Jacob. His mother told Jacob, you need to run. And Jacob would never see his mother again. And for 20 years, Jacob would be gone. I guess it's a good idea to give God what he wants when he wants it, and let God work out. Because when we put our hands into the mix, it's amazing how things can get kittywampus. So Jacob takes off. What I want to do is spend a little time this morning talking about home improvement. Since not everybody's going to sign up for the parenting class, which you're invited to sign up for, parents and grandparents, I thought I would give you a foretaste of a parenting class, because this was one family that needed some home improvement. And when I'm talking about it, it's more than just a family, because relationships need to be improved. And when I say home improvement, I'm talking about improving the relationships that we have with each other. Number one, the first one is pay attention. Pay attention. You may not be able to pay your bills, but you can pay attention. Sometimes things are going on right before us and we don't even see them. Isaac did not pay attention to Rebekah. He did not pay attention to Jacob, and created a mess for the family. And so when one of the children come to you, or your spouse comes to you, put the newspaper aside, turn off the TV, give them your undivided attention, and give them eye contact, because what that means is, I'm putting aside my busy schedule right now because I want you to know you're important and I value you. It's a simple way of communicating value to somebody. Paying attention. Just paying attention. And sometimes when you're paying attention, you need to be really putting an effort into listening. And sometimes we pay attention just long enough so that we could respond to the person and we already have our response, and we haven't even heard the issue yet. Sometimes anger is really a cry for help. But if you're not listening, you think this is the moment to defend yourself. And we become defensive when we need to be listening. Because the issue is not anger. The issue is somebody's hurt. That's why we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention because we might be listening to the wrong thing, and we need to sometimes listen in between the lines. Because something is being said all the time. And people don't always have the ability or the want to express their real feelings, and that's why we need to, when we deal with people, we need to read in between the lines, because there is a message there somewhere, but you never get the message until you're paying attention. That's number one. Number two, it's all about time. Time is an important commodity. It must be important because our scientists have created an atomic clock that doesn't lose seconds and minutes. In fact, it takes years for the atomic clock to lose a second or two. But now, they are working on a new clock. They don't have it yet, but they're working on this new clock, and this is what they plan for the new clock. This new clock is going to keep time so accurately that it will not gain or lose 1 second in 10 billion years. And I don't know who's going to hang around long enough to prove whether or not that's true. But it does say this much. It says that time is important. David prays, Lord, teach us the number of our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Time is important. Time is important to our lives. We don't need to lose or gain a second in 10 billion years. We're not going to be here that long. But time, giving time to the family is critical. And it can be done in so many different ways. I read about a father who used to read a story to his daughter every night before she went to bed. She settled on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So I read it one night, and the next night she wanted to hear it again. And the night after that, she wanted to hear it again. And every night she wanted to hear Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So he had an idea. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak into a tape recorder, and then I'll let her listen to the tape recorder every night so she'll hear the story. So he did it. And he brought it in, he turned the tape recorder on, walked away, and she listened to it. But the next night she was in tears. She refused to turn that tape recorder on. He said, why don't you turn the tape recorder on? Because it's the story. And she said this, it doesn't let me sit on its lap. I want you, Daddy. Not the tape recorder. It's about time. It's just a moment. And it slips right through. And we'll never get it again. Time is flying. And before you know it, it's gone. That's why it's about time. It's all about time. Your time. My time. Giving our time is a gift that says, I care. Years ago, I was getting ready to watch a TV program with Nancy Ann. Caroline was just a little girl, and I would pray with her every night before she went to bed. And the TV program was just about ready to come on. So I went in, and I was going to pray with Carol Ann, and she said, Daddy, can I have a glass of water? So I went in and got a glass of water and gave her a glass of water. And then I was going to pray, and she said, Daddy, would you tuck me in? So I tucked her in, And after I tucked her in, she said, "Can I have another glass of water?" The television program's already started. So I go get another glass of water, I bring it into Carol Ann, and then I pray a quick, very quick prayer. And I was about to leave. And she said, "Daddy." And she put her arms around me. She said, "I love you, Daddy." And in that split second, I said, "I don't care about that TV program. That TV program is not that important. We have this moment to have and to hold in our hand. It's about time." And so we give our family the time that they need, and we give people the time that they need. That's being sensitive towards other people. Time. Number 3, watch your language. Words can be heavy. There's a poem, everybody has heard this poem. "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never harm me." That's not a good poem. I got a better one. I just changed the words a little bit. "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words, like a razor blade, can cut me into pieces and leave me on the side of the road bleeding, and all the king's horses and all the king's men can't be put back together again." And that's the truth. Because words can hurt. Words can damage. Words can leave a scar on a person's mind for decades, for a lifetime. You call a child stupid or dumb or in some way indicate that they are good for nothing, and it will have a life all of its own. And I've mentioned this before. When I was a kid, I was always picked last for a game because I can't play anything. I can't play baseball, football, basketball. I don't know anything about it. I don't even know the rules. I don't even care to know the rules. If you want to know the rules, ask Bobby. Bobby knows the rules. Pastor Bobby will fill you in on how it works and who's playing what. But the thing that really hurt me, because I was used to now being picked last, but what bothered me the most is when sometimes when I was picked, I would hear somebody say, "Oh no, not Joe." So now, after all of these years, I want to hear the devil say, "Oh no, not Joe." We're afraid of Joe. Joe's got some backup. Words hurt. Psychologists tell us this: it takes 12 hugs of praise to offset every scolding. That's interesting. 12 hugs of praise to offset one scolding. The reason why is because a scolding is negative, and negative things have a way of staying, where the positive things come and go like a butterfly. But a scolding has the force of a bazooka. In all the years that I've been in the ministry, I get lots of letters. I will receive emails, and I will get letters over the years of people that have appreciated the ministry. But the ones where they were critical are the ones I remember, because negative things penetrate. So we need to be careful about language and words. 12, think about this. Every time I have to discipline my child, I need to remember that I need to offset it with some praise. I remember reading about President Taft, who had a secretary that kept making mistakes on the typewriters for the letters that he sent out, and that was not good, because the president has to have letters that are proper and grammatically correct. And so he called her into his office one time, and I don't remember her name, but he said, "I just want you to know I really appreciate the fact that you're my secretary and that you help me in these areas where I need to communicate with a lot of people, but I would like you to be careful about the spelling." He added some praise to a criticism. That's good salesmanship. that's good for the family. It's a home improvement tactic that can help the family. When it comes to communication, this is shocking statements, but it's true. When it comes to communication, they say that 7% of our communication is verbal. 93% is nonverbal. So when I'm speaking to somebody, actually I'm communicating with my words 7%. But everything else is communicated 90. What is this everything? What is this nonverbal communication? It's this. My posture. My disposition. My disposition is the color, my tone of voice. It's not verbal. And that nonverbal communication is more powerful than the words that I'm using. The gestures. There are others. My body language, a smile or a frown, or even the trace of a smile or the trace of a frown communicates. So when we're communicating, we're so careful about using the right words to make sure that the words, they're watching all of these other parts to see if the words are matching the nonverbals. And we can't hide that. We can be careful about our words, but we're not really careful about all those other ways of expression because we don't have a lot of control over them. So we need to watch our language. And then attitude is everything. They say that. Attitude is everything. And we know that's true. Because that's the thing you pick up from people. You pick up their attitude. It's the attitude that touches you. Even before they even talk, and even after they've talked. It's attitude that you're trying to evaluate, you're trying to understand. When I was a kid in the 4th or 5th grade, there was a teacher, it wasn't my teacher, but he was in school, called Mr. Bash. His name was his attitude. He was mean, and he had the paddle, and in those days you could paddle the kids. Now he'd be in jail. But that's how he left. 70 years later, I still remember Mr. Bash. I can't remember the other teachers' names. I remember Mr. Bash, and he wasn't even my teacher. I remember him because he was mean. He had an attitude that when he walked around, he was gruff and menacing, and he doled out the punishment, so all the kids were afraid of Mr. Bash. And I grew up to discover this. There's a Mr. Bash everywhere. He may change his name to protect the innocent, but the Mr. Bash you find it in the corporation, you find a Mr. Bash in the church, you find Mr. Bash at school, you find Mr. Bash at home. And we need to be careful, but Mr. Bash needs to know this. Attitude is everything. That's what you're communicating. Criticism, especially constant criticism, will tear down a person's self-esteem. Did you know that every 78 seconds a teenager attempts suicide? That says something about how we can affect a little change in that area with the kind of attitude that is embracing and encouraging and positive. Try this sometime. It's a little experiment you can do. And I'm sure that it'll work because I've tried it. I've tried it enough times. I know that it really does work. And it's simple to do. You can do it anyway. You could be at the mall, walking down the street, going to the post office. You could do this anywhere. Try this sometime. Just walk up to somebody, a stranger, a total stranger, and say, "Would you please tell me what time it is?" Now, they'll look at their watch if they have one, and they'll tell you what the time is. And so you walk away knowing that it's now whatever time. But you also know something else that you may not even be aware of, but you picked it up. You're evaluating the person's attitude when they were telling you what time it was. And your attitude in your own heart was examining their attitude, and you walked away thinking, was he abrupt? Was he in a hurry? Was he bothered? Was he cheerful? Was he accepting? Because that's what we pick up, and we don't even realize we're picking it up. Because the time is really not that important. That person's attitude was very important. Because if his attitude is gruff and rough, and he feels hurried, and you feel like you've been a bother, you're taking away with you a negative feeling. And you can experiment. If it's true, if that's true, and that is so simple, and we're talking about a stranger, imagine how true attitude is when you're dealing with somebody every day. Attitude is everything. Everything. Moods are an attitude. And it's one thing about moods, you really can't cover them up. If you have a mood, you ever hear somebody say, don't talk to him now, he's in a mood. Or don't talk to her, she's in a bad mood. And usually it's a very negative thing. You know, if somebody's in a mood, you think in terms of it's a bad thing. Because if they're in a good mood, it's easy to deal with it. But if they're in a bad mood, you already know you got a problem. And many times we allow our moods to dictate how we're going to handle the circumstances as it comes our way. Instead of looking at the circumstance in a non-judgmental way, we now are looking at the circumstance in a judgmental way because of a mood. We can't let our moods interfere with our relationships. That's part of growing up. When I was a child, I thought, understood as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. That's one of those childish things we need to put away. Moods can hurt. So the lesson is simply this. You're in the schoolroom. We are in the parenting class. Number one, pay attention. It's important to pay attention. Number two, it's about time. Number three, watch your language. And number four, attitude is everything. And these are simple statements. They look real simple. They're much more difficult to do on a regular basis because it does require a change. If you're not doing these things, it requires some effort in making a change. And we just need God's help in making changes. Everybody, anybody, knows that they have done some things that were wrong. We cannot fix the beginning of a story. It's done. It's in the past. It's chiseled in stone. This is what we can do. We can take that story and write the ending. And we can write a good ending on any story if we ask God to help us. And this is where God needs to come in. This is the reason why we come and learn to worship, because we need God's help. God needs to illuminate our mind to understand, how can I put the ending on this? This is a bad situation. I need some help. Lord, tell me what to do. Tell me how to act. Give me the attitude that I need. Give me the kind of instruction that only your word can give. I need to put an ending on this thing because the beginning was bad. Here's the potter for Corey. Are you here? This is for Corey. In Jeremiah 18, God told Jeremiah to go down to the potter's house. I'm going to talk to you. But God didn't say a word as he was at the potter's house and he was watching. All he did is he saw the potter working the clay. And while it was in the potter's hand, because later on God is going to say he's the potter, while it was in the potter's hand, the clay vessel was marred. How could that be? How could it be if you're in the potter's hand and if God is the potter? How could the clay be marred? How could it be cracked? How could it be broken? It was. And the good thing about it is this. The potter didn't take the clay and toss it out into the ash heap. He took the clay and made it over again. That's the redeeming value of God's word. Yeah, we made mistakes. Is there anybody that hasn't made a mistake? If you haven't made a mistake, I bow low to you because I'm probably in the presence of God himself. We've made mistakes. We've done things wrong. We know we need to correct certain things. The family always needs improvement. But the wonderful thing about it is the potter takes the clay that's broken and he puts it back together again, new. He puts the finishing touch. We can't rewrite the beginning, but we can rewrite the ending. We need God's help, which means we need the potter. Because the potter knows things the clay will never know. Clay has no idea why it's got to go on the wheel. The clay has no idea why the clay has to be wet and then pressed and shaped and molded. It doesn't understand any of that. It feels like a victim in the hands of the potter. But the potter's doing something. And the potter knows. And that's where trust comes in. We got to trust the potter to do what only he can do. I saw this in my internet. You got the disciples are in a storm. And it's the kind of a storm that only Jesus can calm. This country is in a storm. Some families are in a storm. Some marriages are in a storm. Some lives are in a storm. Some businesses, some careers are in a storm. And we need Jesus. Because only Jesus knows how to calm a storm and bring peace and help us change. That's why we're so reliant upon the Lord. I need thee. Oh, I need thee. You know, you get married, it's like a learner's permit. We don't know what we're doing. We got to learn as we go. And that's why we come into his presence. I need thee. Oh, I need thee. Because we do. Because there are situations that can come our way that we have no idea how to handle. I need you, Lord. I need you to come and step into my life because there are chains sometimes that are holding me to the past, are holding me to what was written in the beginning, and I need to break away from those lines that were created in the beginning, and I need help in rewriting the ending. I need somebody to break the chains. I need somebody to face the devil. I need somebody to shut the lion's mouths. I need somebody to step into the fiery furnace with me. I need somebody to hold me up when I'm falling apart. I need somebody. And that somebody I need is the potter. I need him. I need his life in my life. And without him, I can't. It's the potter that can move mountains, and the potter that can calm the storm, and the potter that can rework the clay. The enemy comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy, but the potter comes to restore, to revive, and to fix what's wounded. I need thee. That ought to be the theme song of every child of God. I can't do this by myself. I need you. I need your help. There's a song that was played when the young people were in the mentoring class several Sundays ago, and that song touched my heart. And I want you to listen to it, and I'm also going to open up this altar for those who would like to come and pray. And it's really the cry of a person's heart that says, we need a move. We need a move because we can't do this by ourselves. We can't move ourselves. We need God to step in to help us make a move. As we sing this altar is open.
Strongholds are still being loosed. God, we believe, and yes, we can see that wonders are still what you do. Woo! And bodies are still being raised. Giants are still being slain.